Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Give Since Night 2, give you guys the latest and exclusive content on new music, entertainment news, and inspirational quotes by me. Queen is back. Alright, so I just got finished reading this amazing memoir by one of my favorite artists of all time, Mariah Carey. She released her memoir back in September of this year, so I finally got my hands on my physical copy. It's called The Meaning of Mariah Carey, the #1 New York Times bestseller with Michaela Angela Davis. Now I'm going to get into depth of this book, and like I said, guys, I've been a teen Billy since I was a little girl. This book is it touches your soul, it touches your heart. Mariah Carey is the definition of being resilient. And as a fan, I have most of her albums, and her music has saved my life. And what's so fascinating about her, she came from hard times and she came from poverty, but she really utilized her strength within herself to use the gift of her talent in music to make it in the music business. And I'm going to talk about my favorite highlights from this book, and I will definitely talk about how, and later on in its conclusion, my overall thoughts and opinions. Because really, Mariah Carey, when we look back at her career, she's been in the music game for over 30 years. That's a huge blessing. That's a huge compliment. And I'm telling you, the first time I actually heard Mariah Carey was a friend. She used to babysit me, and I heard Fantasy for the first time. I wasn't exposed to her music at the time, but I didn't know who she was. But the first time I got exposed to her song Fantasy, I was like, who is this chick? And we were playing, I think it was the album Mariah Carey with the gray album background with her standing in that, really badass pose, black and white. So that was pretty much me getting exposed to her music. And then I grew up listening to her songs. Very meaningful, have so much of that, connection with her fans. And, Mariah, she talks about, her childhood upbringing. Her parents, an interracial couple, her father, Alfred Roy, and her mother, Patricia. And she talks about her experiences growing up as a biracial child with her brother and sister Morgan and Allison. And what I loved about this story is pretty much these stories where it's kind of like a folk tale in a way to me, how she was able to articulate the events of her life from start to middle to the end. And I love that, especially with Mariah, she has always been personal with her fans. And I haven't met the woman, but because of her music and how much of a huge impact she's made, in the music culture and pop culture, Mariah Carey was destined to be a force to be reckoned with. I've always respected the underdogs, because with her, I teared up in some of the, parts of the book. And I love how she talks about her, triumphs and her ability to really persevere. One thing, or a couple of things I want to talk about. I want to talk about her, dealing with, having a dysfunctional family, and how it was good at sometimes, but she felt like an outsider. And then what really, really stood out was how the dynamic of her, feeling isolated, feeling alone from her brother and sister. Now, Allison and Morgan, they're her older siblings, and she talked about how she felt like they didn't really like her. They felt resentment towards her. And like I said, she had to really struggle, and she had to really deal with her brother. I'm gonna start with her brother Morgan. Her brother, she noticed how he was going through things, and he had struggled with his own personal identity as a biracial kid, along with her sister Allison. And I think that, that also affected her in the long run. And when we think about it, and like I said, I'm not a mixed person. I don't have experience being a mixed person, but I was able to really fully look at her perspective, look through the lenses of who she is as a biracial woman of black and Irish descent. So it's like with her, she had to really, come into terms with being who she is. And also, like I said, she dealt with racism and prejudice, which really broke my heart. As a child, she experienced racism as a child. And a few parts in the book when she talked about her going to school, she was very outgoing, very bubbly. And some of the teachers treated her differently, and some of the students treated her differently. And, she talked about it because I'm an artist, and it was something that really moved me, where she said she was 4 years old, and then she was like, she was drawing a family portrait of her parents, and this teacher came up to her and smirked at her. She had drew a picture of her father. He's black. He was black, and the teacher looked over her shoulder and did a smirk and laughed. "Oh, that's the wrong crown, Mariah." And Mariah knew in her heart at 4 years old, she was like, "No, it's the right crown." But that almost made me cry, because it was like, that was something that, unfortunately, she had to see the dark side of people not being able to fully accept people for who they are. And, like I said, racism and prejudice has been that has been going on for years. But for her to experience that trauma, experience that pain for, a teacher that dismissed everything who she is, her whole family, just because the teacher was ignorant. I thought that was pretty much the highlight from the book. And the thing is, it is, in reality, that's what things have been happening in the world. But I love that Mariah was able, to talk about how, as a mixed child, it's like she dealt with experiences from like not fully being accepted from the black side and not fully being accepted from the white side, which, is very interesting. And I like that she also talked about how, her parents, they didn't really, I wouldn't say they didn't, like, it wasn't like they didn't talk to her about racism or like interracial dating and all that. It was kind of swept under the rug, because even during those times, I go back to like civil rights era, I go back to Jim Crow era, so I know the history of this country too. But she was able to really, conquer that fear, to be like, what, I am who I am, whether you like it or not. So that was cool. And then I love how, she was exposed to music as a young age, and then when she got into, growing up into her adolescent years, she had a very, passion for music. And this is why Mariah will always be one of the greatest singers of all time, period. Because how her music, and even as I reflect back as a lamb too, most of her albums are pretty much from her personal experiences, which she has been through. And so as a songwriter, she was able to really, tell her story through her music. And that's why, Team Lamb Billy, we go in for her. But yeah, a lot of that, stuff, she was able to transcend and transform and elevate, to make sure that she was able to really, captivate and bring in a whole new sound for music. Another thing that I would like to talk about is, her getting into the music business and the music industry, and also talks about her marriage with who. I'm not gonna name his name, so I'm gonna do Harry Potter style. I'm not gonna do it her first husband, so you guys get the drift. And even though she had success, as a young artist, she talked about in depth of her personal life how she lived under a microscope, and I can definitely relate, because she talked about how she was being controlled a lot. She didn't really have a lot of freedom, and it was just so much drama. And her first husband, he was a powerful man, a CEO in the music business, but he pretty much gave her hell. Okay, he was like, hey, it's my way or the highway. And she talked in depth of the marriage, how it really was kind of like a business arrangement, and she went along with it, but at the time we were young, you try new things, and that's just what had happened. But I loved that when she talked about how, even though the huge success that she had from her music, he was very dominant, and he really controlled every aspect of her music career, and especially when she wanted to venture out and try new things. And of course, when it comes to the music, he was very like, okay, well, this ain't it, this ain't that, but she really had found the time to take the courage to try different things, work with different artists, and especially in the hip hop and R&B world. And I feel like that was another highlight of her music career, because like I said, how she was marketed. You look back at Mariah Carey's older pictures in her older eras. She was marketed as like soulful, dainty, R&B charisma, but then as she got older, she was maturing more into a woman, and he started kind of getting a little bit too overprotective, if you know what I mean. But she talked about how, as she was, working with different artists, upcoming artists in the game, trying to, make it in music, she also formed really good friendships and really good like acquaintanceships long throughout her music career. And it was another highlight of the story, which was very interesting, like her and the Brat. I love the Brat, by the way. I grew up with her music, and it was crazy because this ties back how she really dealt with like that unnecessary control, and that it was kind of, and to me, that man a narc and a RC narcissist. Okay, but anyway, her and the Brad, they wanted to go out and get something to eat, some fries, and during the time, Jermaine Dupri, an up and coming producer, Jermaine Dupri, he's a genius, by the way. And when she was able, her and the Brad wanted to get out and get some fries, that was when things started getting a little bit crazy, and I hate that Jermaine Dupri, he called hell too. Poor Jermaine Dupri. There was some, conflict going, on, and they had to, go back to the mansion and, stay in that household, while making music. So it was kind of like, because I know people have different opinions of Mariah Carey, and even throughout the years, and listen, we don't know any of these people, but I've always connected with her through her music, and that's what really pushed her to be the main, vessel, through her songwriting, through her music, and through everything that she pushed and worked hard for. Because, even when people would like throughout the years, it's like, oh, she's a diva in a bad way. Oh, well, she thinks she all that, and, she didn't really, she how people assume, oh, everything was given to her. But I guarantee you, nothing was given to her. She worked her ass off. She pretty much came from humble beginnings. And, it's really amazing how people that are humble, and they came from where they came from, it's like no matter what, and I always say this myself, don't let anybody dim your light, because you're going to have a-holes, they're going to put you down, who you are. And Mariah Carey is a perfect example of redefining herself and being a phoenix rising from the ashes. And she really, 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 this book is just so, it's kind of like a personal diary. As I was reading it, I couldn't stop reading each chapter, each page, because really when it comes to like books nowadays, I just love to get to the main important ingredient of like, okay, what's gonna happen next, the main, of the song, of the story, where, the person came from and all that, good stuff, and the good and the bad. And, with Mariah Carey, even as a, older lamb, I really felt like she was speaking to me too. I felt like how, as I was reading her story, she really spoke within, she spoke for all her fans. And I really love that, how she was like, at times how she felt just so isolated, and alone. And I know that feeling. I've been there. Sometimes I still have it. So that's what makes people vulnerable at times. And I loved how she shared about her vulnerability. And I liked how she was able to really, strip herself bit by bit, piece by bit, piece by piece. And it takes, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of, it's like you have to have that fire. It's something within you. Your destiny awaits. And that's what Mariah Carey did. She was able, with the good, the bad, and negativity, she was able to really like use all that positive and that negative and that trauma to really push herself and elevate. And this is going to be a little bit like a long review, but it's all good because I love to interact with my subscribers and followers. But she it's like, even with her as an entertainer, how it is, because I know how it is with the entertainment world. But like I said, Mariah has always been one of these artists that, even when she makes her music, she'll make sure that the music is right. And she was very serious about her songwriting, her direction of her music. She knew the vision that she wanted to create. And also, even she talked about how, she was finding herself in the music business. She was trying to find her own sound. And as I always talk about on my music channel, I am an advocate for artists, being unique, being different, and don't be afraid to try something different and unique with your music. That's how Mariah Carey, was able to really reinvent herself throughout all these years. And it's funny how, even with some of her haters, she got haters too. Some people, some people try to downplay her legacy. And as a fan, it is what it is. I don't care if you don't like Mariah Carey. I don't care if you don't like her music. Fine, do you. But I feel like even for her, as I look back to her catalog, and I do listen to like her biggest hit records, which she, talked about the success of like her hit records and songs, where, where they stem from. They stem from her personal relationships with her ex-husband. Stem from having a crush with someone that she was, she was deeply starting to fall in love with, and, all of that. She was able to really just write her, it was kind of like she was writing her own diary, autobiography, with her lyrics. So with Mariah Carey, it's like she has always been a perfect example, because when it comes to like craftsmanship, you got some artists, they got the authentic, they got the originality, and they make music that, is relatable. And Mariah Carey is relatable. And, forget all that, let's scratch that, diva stuff in a bad way. But even for Mariah Carey, her music, really did save a lot of people's lives. She has connected with fans throughout every ethnicity, every group, every sexual orientation, and regardless of who they are, people have said, yeah, Mariah Carey has saved my life with her music. And it's such a beautiful thing to connect with artists that understands you, because like I said, we're all human beings. We go through things, and we're not perfect, but we know from our different experiences and our different backgrounds. So I love that Mariah Carey, her mission was to always make sure that she was herself, and she made sure, and this is what I love about her too. I love how, she never had this like, how some people, they have like the entitlement, and some people, they have portrayed her as that, their perception, their opinion, her like, oh, she has that entitlement. But reading this book, Mariah definitely, you know, as a human being herself, she had to really find herself. You know, she had to, you know, go through the storm, you know, making sure that, you know, she wanted to be happy, be successful, be sane, you know, have a thriving music career. And like I said, the music industry is cutthroat. She has seen a lot of things. And also, oh, let me tell you something. Man, when she talked about the glitter era, and I remember the glitter era, I think I was in like the 4th grade when the glitter era came out. And you know, she talked about how, you know, she, like I said, she talked about how her marriage from her first husband, you know, she was done with him and she moved on and stuff like that. And oh boy, whew, I got pissed. I got mad as hell as a teen man Billy, because that man, he was insane. He was trying to, like, you know, bring her down. He was trying to mess up her music career. And I think it's so disturbing and pathetic when people, they go out their way to tear you down and smear your name. But you know what people always say, what's done in the dark, it will always come to light. And I feel like people like that, I always say I don't feel sorry for them at all, because it's like, for her, she really knew that she could do, you know, she can be successful without him as well, you know. And I think that with him, of course he helped her out. I mean, of course, you know, he pulled the strings, you know, and he helped with the promotion, the marketing, stuff like that. But the kind of abuse that she endured, it was really narcissistic abuse, you know, she endured. It was verbal abuse, it was mental abuse, you know. And he just didn't care, you know. He just always wanted to be like the one in front, you know. And you know, she really struggled trying to be her own boss. But like I said, after she, you know, moved on from him and she got into more of herself and tapped into the inner glow, she was able to really, you know, have more confidence and gain more experience and really, you know, propel into her music career. And I do remember that TRL incident. She talked about that. She talked about how, you know, she, you know, that instance with, what's that guy name? Was it, he was the host. I'm gonna put it in the comment, but you know, that incident, we all know, Mariah Carey fans know, Teen Man Billy know. And she was having, you know, she was struggling, you know, she had her mental breakdown. And it was kind of like, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes, you know. And I always have said, as a fan, you know, people are human beings, artists are human beings. Just because someone looks good on the outside, you don't know what's going on the inside. And I think that people, the misconception about her is that, oh, she had it all together, she was perfect all the time. No, she wasn't, you know. And that was something, a highlight that she talked about, and how, you know, even during the making of like the Glitter movie, and you know, and the making of the album, and finally, like I said, you know, Mariah Carey fans, Teen Man Billy, Glitter finally got the justice that it deserved, the album, in the movie. So that's great, that's a win. And you know, it just goes to show you, you know, you can't give up. You know, no matter how things are tough, you gotta keep pushing. You know, you gotta find that inner strength in you. And, you know, you have to really, you know, roll in with the punches. And I think that's what Mariah, she has done a really good example of, just never giving up. And also, you know, like I said, she even celebrated successful moments. She talked about like how people that she made connections with, like friendships, like Whitney Houston. I love Whitney Houston. She'll always be missed. She talked about Whitney Houston, and she talked about how the music industry, you know, was always pitting them against each other. But both of them, Whitney and Mariah, they changed the game. They did a successful duet, When You Believe, from The Prince of Egypt. I have that movie, and like I said, it just showed how like women in music can get along. There doesn't have to be this competition, or it doesn't, you know, it's really overbearing in my honest opinion, because I feel like there's room for artists, but I love how, her and Whitney, they got along. It was genuine. They knew how the game was. They knew how it went, and I love how they vibe with each other in a respect thing. So it wasn't no like hostility. Also, she mentioned Prince. When she mentioned Prince, I swelled up too. Tears. I almost started to cry because Prince, he was another artist that he came from humble beginnings, and he really like supported her through thick and thin. He really was like her backbone too. When things got rough for her, he supported her. And Prince, he knew how the music industry was too. It was all over the place, and he saw some ugly things. And as a Prince fan myself, I feel like he definitely was in her corner, and really was like, yo sis, it's all good. Don't let people tear your spirit down, because he had experienced that. He has went through that. And I love when people, especially like genuine people, they support each other. But it goes to show you that, like I said, these people, like I said, I feel like even nowadays with, like I said, pop culture and music, like I said, I try not to get so sensitive, but sometimes I do get sensitive, but that's just me, because I do, like I said, I do have like I do have empathy, and I also, believe that, like I said, it's a journey for all of us. So I love that, Prince, he really was her ride or die friend, and how, she was able to talk to him, and, be able to just like have that support. It's a blessing when someone really sees your gift and they're not envious of you. And Prince, he was about that life, okay? If Prince, he was about that don't take no ish from nobody, because, he himself has experienced, not really getting the right support, and even when they talked about getting their masters, being independent artists, and being able to really navigate in this music industry, which is very cool to read how, she was able to, despite all the things she was going through, she persevered. So that was great. And also, like I said, getting back in the game and music, and like I said, Mariah Carey, she's one of these artists that she'll always have a place in my heart. Also, let's get into like the positive things too. I love that, she talked about how, when she was getting back, I know the Emancipation of Mimi came out in 2005. I remember, I think I was in middle school when that album came out. I get that album to this day. It's one of my favorite albums from start to finish. So she talked about the success of that. She also talked about how, like I said, she just wanted to do what she wanted to do. She was living life, enjoying herself. And I love when people, they talk about how they just have the desire to be happy. They have the desire to just make and fulfill their dreams, and you have to do that, and like I said, you just have to find that inner badass in you and go for it. So, with her, like I said, she really is one of a kind, she's legendary, and I just enjoyed this book from start to finish. It's just amazing. I recommend people reading this book, and I love that in this book there are pictures of her family, and she even talks about her family history and her aunties and all that great stuff. So even for her, regardless of all the things she has been through, she was able to really use everything and really put her, trauma, her pain, her happiness into her music. And that's what I want artists to do. I want more artists to do that, because I think that what's missing today in today's music is the soul. Mariah came from an era of soul. She came from an era of like actually having the talent, actually having the work ethic. And she also have made a lot of, good, friendships, even the legends, like Aretha Franklin and Diana Ross, beautiful queens, beautiful black queens. And Mariah Carey, like I said, is a mixed biracial woman. She, like I said, when it comes to people knowing who they are, she really, she really had to really tap into that, I'm going to be who I am regardless of people like it or not. So, because I grew up with those people too, like Aretha, I grew up with Whitney and Diana Ross, listened to their music. And even with the music and era that they came from, she grew up listening to them. Those are her influences. And Minnie Riperton. I grew up listening to Minnie Riperton. And this is how I know artists, like where they get their inspiration from, the influences. You can hear in the music. And Mariah has always been about just bringing that love and bringing that light and bringing that authenticity into the music. Because even with her, she's pretty much one of the best of the best. She's pretty much like one of the OGs in a good way. And I think that for her to really, she's another one, her impact, how she inspired, many artists that came after her too. She's pretty much a setting example of like making sure that, your music and, your message makes a difference. Because even for her, she just, like I said, there were times where I wanted to cry. There were times where I laughed, and this is another thing about Mariah. She has a sense of humor. She's one of these like homegirls, like she, if you feeling bad or you don't feel good, she will take something out of a negative situation and she will like light up the room. And she's just so down to earth, and she has like that good spirit. As I was reading this book, I felt her spirit. It was like I felt that connection, her soul. As I was reading every chapter, every sentence, every word. She really spoke to me, and of course she speaks she speaks to the fans too. So like I said, this book is really, really good. I recommend you guys check it out. I think that she really, she really did a damn thing with this book. And I also like how she talked about, raising her children, them babies, Moroccan and rock and roll. And, she wanted to give them a life where, they didn't need to deal with all that chaos. They didn't have to deal with all that drama. And even when she talked about conflict within the family, there were moments where I was like, what the heck? I was like, oh, hell no. Because even she had went through that trauma of, trying to have that family structure and having that family dynamic. And some of her, like I said, there were some personal parts in the story I don't want to get into too, but, I want to make this video, like, nice, short and sweet, but not too long. But I love that, there were moments where she had to have faith. There were moments where, she was, it's kind of like this. When you deserve better, and sometimes you feel scared. Sometimes you don't know the unknown. But that little voice inside of you that said, don't give up, that's what kept her going. So, like I said, it was really great to read this book. And especially on a personal level for me, I feel like, I see myself as the little girl for myself too. That there's some things that I've went through personally in my life where I experienced trauma. And, I will open up later on this YouTube channel because I want to, I would like to share some things that I have went through. So with that being said, Mariah Carey, you did a great job, sis. I would say, wrapping up my conclusions to this memoir, I think that it's a great body of work. She really took her time with this book. Anyone can read it. I recommend anyone who's interested. And you don't have to be a Mariah Carey fan to, you know, understand Mariah Carey. You can, if you're interested, read the book. And yeah, because see, there are some really great moments in that book. There's some really, you know, there's some things that you can learn from in that book. But definitely Mariah Carey, she really, she did an amazing job. And, you know, like I said, Team Man Billy, you know how we roll. That's our queen forever. The Songbird Supreme. So you already know. What's the saying people say? Often imitated, never duplicated. Of course. So with that being said, Mariah Carey, we love you. Thank you for sharing and opening up your heart to share your personal experience. I know that you want to do this forever. I know, like, us fans, we have been there for you. We have ride or die for you for years. You've really changed the world with your music. It's a blessing. You really did a damn thing, and you keep doing a damn thing. And you know, you're such an inspiration to me too, to not give up and lead by my faith, and you know, make it happen. So with that being said, guys, Mariah Carey fans, share your thoughts and your opinions. Stay tuned on the next episode. Give Since 92. Like, share, comment, subscribe down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button, and as always, stay tuned on the next episode. Give Since 92. Dragon Ball Z narrative reference. Peace. Bye bye, you girls. As it out. The Super Saiyans out.